first, this is a fairly short text about Page Street.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then these are drawings.
Oh, nice.
So you have a typical plan.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of blocks, you see, that's
Yeah.
the sort of site.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that, and then some, not very much, just these photos.
Yeah.
Partly because I'm not sure that all of this was built at the time of publishing this book.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure of that. I mean, I think now, at the time, everyone was absolutely fascinated by Lutyens. This was 81. They certainly weren't fascinated by his work in the 1930s
Mm-hmm.
or even the 40s, because the modern movement was growing, you see. But by the time you got to the 70s, there was a change, a real change, you know. And so I think it's remained pretty steady. I mean, I think people now think that he is one of our greatest architects, you know, along with Christopher Wren and so forth. And I certainly think that. You know.
Yeah.
And that's remained steady.
Mm-hmm.
You know. I first I went to the Courtauld Institute, History of Art, and then I went as a volunteer to the Royal Institute of British Architects, and they have a drawings collection, you know, and they had a lot of drawings by Lutyens. In fact, nearly all the surviving ones, really. They had about 3,000, but that had been cut down. When he died, the number of drawings that were left were, I think, 86,000. The RIBA cut that down to 3,000. Now, we would think that's a terrible thing to do now, but at that time, in 1963, nobody valued architectural drawings, really. I mean, they would value something in the 17th century or Renaissance drawings, but they certainly didn't value architectural drawings of the 20th century, you know. So it's a great shame that many were lost. But anyway, there were 3,000 drawings left. And so they asked me to catalogue them. And, which I did for about 3 years.
Okay.
And that's how I got to know his work. You see.
Yeah, and I guess pretty well then.
Yes, that's right.
That's really nice.
And since then, of course, well, first of all, in 1981, a group of us who were very interested in Lutyens held a major exhibition at the Hayward Gallery. And that increased, that there was a lot of interest at that time in the 70s for arts and crafts architecture. Sort of gradually growing, you know, you could tell that the architectural students, particularly at the AA, Architectural Association, were very keen on arts and crafts, and so we thought it would be a good exhibition. And it was hugely popular. You know, because people loved his houses and all the rest of it, you know. So later, after that, we paused a bit, and then we set up something called the Lutyens Trust, which is a charitable organisation. We have events and visits and that sort of thing, and we have members, you know. So that's roughly it, you know.
Yeah.
Inside the courtyards, of course, this is rather different because these are concrete, you see, concrete, and actually rather similar to many Dutch housing schemes, actually,
absolutely.
aren't they? But again, you know, he brought in the little shops, and the main entrances always had really nice classical entrances. How was it? Oh yeah. This was quite interesting. This was a walk that our Lutyens Trust did, and
Oh, nice.
so this was the description of it, which partly comes from the text in this book.
Ah, yes, okay, I see.
Partly comes from that, but also Paul Waite, who did this, added little things as well. So you can see, actually it's quite an early date, isn't it? It's 1930, but of course it took a long time to build. So the first 2 blocks were made then. Also, it's sited very nicely. You know, it's almost sited to the southwest.
Yes.
So it doesn't have a north, an unpleasurable north side. So the standard block, 96 flats, etc. There are sort of subtleties in it too. Here, for example, this is a base of stone, right? And then it has this very nice, typical Lutyens classical doorway, right? And there's the other block as well. But here, he puts another long strip of stone to sort of ground the building, you know.
Yeah.
And then he has keystones into the brickwork. All these little details are fascinating, you see.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it isn't just a complete block, you know, with it's really quite subtly managed. And as I say, you know, the windows taper as they go up, and then the checkerboard.
Exactly.
I have a feeling that it was pretty well ignored, really, because there's very little literature on Page Street.
Yeah.
And I think they really thought, to some extent, I think they think now, it's the checkerboard. People think that's a bit odd.
Yeah.
They think it's a bit odd. For him, I mean, there's nothing left by what he says, I'm afraid. There's nothing that you could... I wish he had said something about it. But he obviously wanted variety. He was tremendously against having... I'll just show you something. There was quite an interesting... This is the index of his letters, you see. He was talking, he'd obviously been consulted about the government's post-war building programme. And what he hated was the massing of it all. He says, there ahead of us is an awful quagmire of hideousness and discomfort, 1 million cottages built by a government that can only work through compromise, etc., etc. So he obviously had been did think about public housing, but he was never, except for Page Street, he was never actually asked to do anything. But you can see, I think the checkerboard thing, it's only an idea, is that it was something that would break up the monotony of a brick housing scheme. You see, he would have known, he was very, very, very clued, really. He knew about all the great schemes in Germany and you know, wonderful housing schemes, really. But he wouldn't have liked them because he hated everything being repeated all the time and a big block and lack of proportion. And you know, as I've said, you know, he liked to taper his windows as they went up, you know. Yes. So there was a subtlety in his work, which he never saw in these other big buildings, you see. So I think that's why he did the checkerboard, I'm sure.
Okay.
But I've no proof for that.
Yeah.
He is one of our greatest architects.
Can we see some pictures from inside?
No.
No, there is
We haven't got any. No.
Okay.
I'm sure you could go and the flat.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay, sorry.
Yes, the flat plans. It says here they were divided. The kitchens divided to create a separate bathroom. At first, apparently, people did not want a lavatory in the flat. It says here separate.
I see.
You see, it was put off the entrance, but no bathroom.
Exactly.
But then they got their separate bathroom, and so on. He incidentally liked the checkerboard.
Absolutely, yeah, we can see.
He very much. He often uses that. So there were two. I wrote this down. There were 2 blocks that were completed and opened in 1930.
Okay, I see.
But then the others. But then they went on and on. You see, building them. So, but that's when that was opened. Do have that if you wanted it.
Oh yes.
There's just a few notes. He had a big office. He had a big office in London, and he had an office in Delhi.
Yes.
But he designed everything. It wasn't a question of, one of his assistants designing anything.
Okay, I see.
He designed everything. And, although they would get used to his ways, and he might be able to do a small detail or something, but they would always have to show it to him.
Okay.
That's how it worked.
I see.
Yes, the shops are important, I think. I mean, hardly any other housing scheme has shops, And so it's wonderful that he provided that.
Yes.
I have never seen a picture of anything inside, and that would be really good, wouldn't it? Although one could tell by this thing that things have been changed, particularly the kitchens and bathrooms have been changed.
Exactly.
But I don't think the I don't think these rooms, the living rooms, would be changed. It'd be nice to see, a fireplace and 2 windows and that sort of thing,
Absolutely.
It'd be marvellous to see that.
If I have the chance to go and make pictures, I will send them.
Yeah, that would be very,
definitely.
very good. You're a serious person, and they know that they must all know that it's by Lutyens, Yes, I'm meant to be working on a book, and which I might do. I might just take it early Lutyens, but not the whole scope, because of Delhi is such an important thing, and that needs a book in itself, really.
Yes. And that's what you're working on at the
Yes,
moment,
that's
so
right.
that's nice.